everybody, and welcome to the 57th SongBike Guitar Q&A live stream. My name is Jonathan. It's July 20th, 2024. I'm here for your questions, and I have some stuff to throw your way in between your questions. We had a question right out of the gate from Wendy. Wendy asks, could you please discuss microphones and amplification for instruments with no electronics, like acoustic guitars, right? Wendy, it's a great question. I have a bunch of suggestions and a bunch of things to think about. I'm also, right off the top, I'm going to encourage you to use resources such as the salespeople over at Sweetwater. They are there to sell you good stuff at your price point. No matter what I say, it's always good to talk to someone like that who knows a lot and knows about the most current recent items. Okay, so having said all that, here's some things to think about when you want to use microphones for live performance or for recording or both. And I'm going to use the acoustic guitar as an example, because not every acoustic guitar has a built-in pickup, built-in microphone. And even if it does, there's nothing wrong with doubling that sound, so to speak, with an external microphone, because that's going to get a slightly different tone for sure, right, than your built-in pickup. Okay, so you want a microphone that is unidirectional. Wherever you aim it, it's listening for that specific sound, right, and it's rejecting sounds from outside that direction, right? If you imagine there's like a cloud around the microphone, you want to ignore that cloud of sound and you want to just pick up your instrument, right? So a unidirectional, not omnidirectional, unidirectional microphone is a good bet. In general, you get what you pay for with microphones. So you don't have to spend $1 million, but just understand that if you find something on Amazon for $29, you know, maybe not everything in life works this way, but microphones in general do. In general, the more you spend, the better quality you're going to get. You want something that is intended to record acoustic instruments, and you can, Google stuff online, best microphones for acoustic guitar. I'm not an expert at this science, but this is definitely what I would do. I would, best acoustic guitar microphones, and that's exactly what I ask my Sweetwater representative. If you have a budget in mind, if you don't, now's the time to do it. But assuming that you have a budget in mind, let's say $100, then whoever you're talking to, you say, okay, I got $100. What's the best mic I can get for acoustic guitar for $100? They may ask you, are you recording or performing, or both? It might be, their answers might be a little bit different depending. I'm guessing that for most of us, what I would call a lower priced or medium priced microphone, you could use the same microphone for both performing or recording. So I wouldn't worry about that too much, but it's something to think about, and something that someone might ask you. For performing, of course, we're all worried about feedback, right? Cranking up the microphone louder and louder so that you can be heard in a live situation. Sometimes that leads to that ear-piercing sound known as feedback. We want to avoid that. So that happens not just because of the microphone, though. There's lots of factors that can lead to feedback, but the right microphone will help you avoid that. Also how you position yourself on stage, and so on, will help avoid that. Aiming the microphone, this is especially important for recording, but for a live performance as well. Exactly where you aim the mic. Guess what? You don't necessarily aim the microphone, say, right at the sound hole. And again, I don't want to get too out of my comfort zone, but I'm very aware that exactly how you aim the mic is going to change the tone that's going to the recording or that's going out to the audience. And that's something to think about too. It's not just as simple as have a microphone and walk up to it and, stick your guitar up to it. They can definitely fine tune it. If you are performing sitting down, that's pretty helpful because then you're stable, you know. Okay, so in terms of microphones, that's about the extent of my knowledge in terms of microphones. Again, sweetwater.com, give them a call, and or maybe you already have a sales rep, and you know, tell them your budget and your exact situation. In terms of amplifying, we're all lucky because more than ever, there are relatively affordable amplifiers that are designed to reproduce the acoustic sound as much as possible. So I 100% encourage you to shop for some that specifically is aimed at acoustic, amplifying acoustic instruments. Fishman is one that comes to mind, but there's lots of them. Ones that Fishman calls it the small box or something like that. But I'm sure there's others as well. So you got to read reviews, talk to people, but 100%. Because here's the thing. Some of you might be old enough to remember when an acoustic guitar on a recording sounded like an acoustic guitar. And at some point in the 1990s, everyone just started plugging in their acoustic guitar, you know, their electric acoustic, directly into the soundboard, directly into something. And I feel like the 1990s was sort of a wasteland of bad acoustic guitar tone, my opinion. I guess to be generous, what we heard a lot of, I think, in the 1990s was a hybrid, a guitar that sounded worse than both an acoustic and an electric, in my opinion. But you sure heard that sound a lot in the 1990s. So I'm going to assume that when your question is coming from a place where you want your beautiful, nice acoustic instrument to sound just as nice to all your listeners, or you know, to the audience, or to whoever's listening to your recording, right? You want to recreate that sound, the same sound that you hear when you play it, right? So that's why I'm strongly suggesting whatever acoustic amplifier fits your budget, for sure, you know. Okay, so that's a great question, Wendy, and I wish I had a ton of really specific information for you, but hopefully that kind of helps. William Collier has a question. William says, good afternoon, Jonathan. What would you advise a student who feels like they're bogged down, not making much progress, but whose commitment and enthusiasm has not waned? Great question. Bill, I bet your teacher just gave you too much stuff. Is that possible that your teacher just gave you too much stuff? I'm very guilty of that because I get enthusiastic. And secondly, I have this fear that a student might get bored if we grind away at one thing for dozens of lessons, right? Even for 4 lessons, you know. So, so Bill, it's a great question, though. If you're bogged down, it is because of either the sheer number of pieces that you're working on, or just the variety. Maybe it's only 3 pieces, but they're all so totally different from each other. Say some, you know, lead rock and roll thing, some chord strumming piece, and then maybe a fancy finger picking thing. 3 very different things with different skills. So, but your commitment is still there, like you said in the chat, and your enthusiasm is still there. So this is where your own personal discipline comes in. You know, prioritizing. I'm not going to say don't do all that stuff, but prioritize it, and ask yourself, number one, what would make you happy? You know, I'm not going to say what song do you like the best, or what feels like it's coming along, what you're making the most progress on. Those are good points. But what makes you happy? You know, the thing that gives you the most pleasure, and you can define that however you want. But I would prioritize that. You know, and I'm as guilty as anyone of wanting to be good at 20 different things. I mean, we all are pursuing this instrument, which is so versatile, right? That you want to try it all. I sure do, you know. So yeah, prioritizing. One way to prioritize things is to make a commitment and say, oh, when I come visit you, I'm going to play you this song, or you know, at that anniversary party, I'm going to play this thing, or you know, because once you make that commitment, then your priorities become super clear. Nothing like making a promise to really get you focused. And again, I'm not saying don't do the other stuff or don't think about it, but now is the time to discipline yourself. Make some make a list, of your priorities. Having said that, in general, I would like you guys to have the same practice format that I want for myself, that I try to create for myself. A certain amount of warm-up time on scales or arpeggios or related things, things that you can do slowly, steadily, just get your brain focused, get your fingers warmed up. You want to have one masterpiece, I call it a masterpiece, that you're working on, something that you fully expect to take you a few weeks, a few months. You want to have one of those in your practice routine. You want to have other things in your practice routine that maybe you're pushing yourself to learn, say, a few new chords. Maybe it's a song with 6 chords and you're good at 4 of them. Maybe it's a song that has nice basic strumming. Your strumming hand is not being challenged, but maybe it's going from G to B minor, and that B minor is hanging you up, but maybe the rest of the chords are okay. It's good to have something like that in your practice routine, something where you're pretty darn close to playing it, but there's 1 or 2 little things hanging you up. Anyways, a balance. So even though I'm encouraging you to prioritize, one thing and make a list, when you sit down to play, let's say you have half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, you do want to get warmed up on something, and you want to sort of reward yourself a little bit too. It's not all about grinding away at that one hard thing. Don't forget to leave a little room to play something that you're good at or that just feels great. But you're asking a great question, and it's something that's on my mind because, like I said, I do tend to get excited and say to someone, "Hey, check out this thing, check out this thing." In my defense, just so you guys know, one thing that I think I've fine-tuned over the years is instead of giving a student a new big project, a masterpiece kind of thing, I'm getting better, I think, at saying, "Oh, here's a cute little half-page thing. Here's a cute little exercise. Here's a cool little riff from a famous song. Enjoy that as an appetizer during your practice session. You can still keep working on your big project, but I'd like to have dozens and dozens of those things that are, a page, maybe less than a page, but something that's fun, interesting, a little provocative, but not something that's going to take over your life or get in the way of your progress on your big thing." Love these questions. Bruce, I see your question. David, I see your question. David, I think I'm going to jump on your question next. David says, "Could we talk about picks? I have a nylon jazz size 1.4 and a regular Fender 0.9. Is there a rule of thumb for when you use different picks and in different situations?" Thanks. Great question. Obviously, there's nothing more personal than your pick, and the reason, even as much or more personal than your guitar, because it's the thing you're touching, right? That you're touching with your dominant hand constantly. You're assuming that you're not playing with your bare fingers. Your choice of pick is a really personal thing. Maybe even more so than your choice of strings, right? Again, it's close. Maybe it's neck and neck. What's more personal, your choice of strings, like the gauge and the feel and the brand, or the pick? Ooh, tough one. That'd be next week's poll question. What's more important, picks or strings? Okay. So the 2 picks you've mentioned are slightly different. When you say jazz size, I'm betting that you're talking about like the little ones that I like, these little, they're smaller than average, right? Oh, I love them. And nylon, slightly different feel, right? And the Fender, the one you're talking about, is the standard. The Fender, to my knowledge, is the best-selling size and shape. The tortoiseshell brown ones are, I think, the most common color. You see those everywhere. So because I do not use different picks in different situations, all I can tell you is I stick with one pick, and I'm sure I change my pressure depending on the situation. I don't always squeeze it super tight. I don't always hold it to the point where it's about to drop out of my hands. You know, I go back and forth depending on the exact moment, the exact thing I'm doing. but let me address your question in another way. In the recording situation, where you might have a microphone right up against your guitar, I mean, right there, you know, I can totally see myself switching to a different pick for a certain sonic effect. Because how cool is that? Just grab a different pick and get a different tone without any EQ, without any, you know, post-production stuff. So I would never say to someone, hey man, choose one pick and stick with it. That's crazy to use more than one pick. Not at all. I don't think it's crazy at all. I will say that the number one time one of my students will say to me, oh, I'm going to switch over to a thinner pick. It's when the student is being asked to do some kind of strumming. You know, that kind of fast down up strumming. And they say, oh, this medium-sized pick or thicker pick, it gets hung up on the strings. I'm going to use a thinner pick, and that's going to solve the problem. And I get the logic, and it's not the worst idea, but you know, I'm using a 1 millimeter pick, and my solution, what I just did there, I just held the pick so lightly. I'm right on the verge of dropping it. So the pick, it's not flexing, it's wiggling in my grip. You know what I mean? It's wiggling between my thumb and my index finger. So I just solved the problem that way instead of switching to a thinner pick. A thinner pick is going to have a different tone as well, right? What did I hear? The thinner the pick, the more you hear the pick itself. The thicker the pick, the more you're hearing the pure sound of the strings themselves. And that kind of makes sense to me. You know, when I do use a thinner pick, I do hear that kind of plasticky sound, which is not a bad thing. It depends, again, on what you're going for. So, so to your specific question, to answer your specific question, I stick with one pick. The only reason I grab another pick, two reasons. If I can't find one of my regular picks, or just to illustrate something with a student to you know, to show them maybe what I just showed you or what I just talked about, you know, how a different pick can have a slightly different tone, you know. But I don't think it's a crazy idea. The only reason I would encourage you to, or encourage anyone to not switch between different picks is if obviously one pick just doesn't feel right, just doesn't, I mean, you love how one pick feels and you're kind of lukewarm in how another pick feels when you play, then I wouldn't, I'd suggest sticking with just one pick. But it sure is fun to have a variety. For those of you who have not found your dream pick, or even if you have, I'll say one more thing. I hope this doesn't sound like I'm going back on everything I just said. 100% try a variety of picks. Highly recommend everybody trying a variety of picks. Even if you think you have your favorite. Yeah, I thought I had my favorite 20-something years ago, and the pick I use now is profoundly different than the one I thought was my favorite. So, yeah, it's always good to have a whole bunch of picks around. You're going to lose them all anyways, right? You know, great question though. Bruce says, I struggle to use arpeggio shapes in playing. Can you talk about and maybe show some examples of using arpeggios in your playing? Yeah. The number one, let's talk about what an arpeggio is real quick. The word relates to playing individual notes from a chord instead of the chord itself, right? Instead of strumming all the strings at once. Classic arpeggio, the way Bob Dylan did House the Rising Sun, he did not arpeggiate, he went, right? His first album called Bob Dylan, The Animals played the same chords but arpeggiated them, right? That individual din, 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 that kind of sound, right? So for us guitar players, that's what we think of as arpeggios. You grab a chord, but then you play the individual strings. Don't forget, some instruments can only play arpeggios. A trumpet player can't play 3 notes at the same time, right? So all they can do is arpeggios. It's in their mind, they're still thinking of it as a chord, right? They're going to arpeggiate an A minor chord. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. So But when you're talking about arpeggio shapes, I bet you're not talking, Bruce, about what I just did with House of the Rising Sun. You're talking about arpeggios as as playing one note at a time all over the neck, not just grabbing an A minor chord. So yes, let's talk about that. So just to be clear though, an A minor arpeggio is 3 notes, A, C, and E. Okay, what you do with those 3 notes is totally up to you. But if you're only playing A's, C's, and E's, and you're dancing back and forth with A's, C's, and E's, then you're doing an A minor arpeggio. I don't want you to get hung up on grabbing an A minor chord and doing individual strings and assuming that's the only way to do an arpeggio. Nope, as long as you're playing some A and some C and some E, some around the neck of the guitar, you are giving the world an A minor arpeggio. By the way, the word arpeggio, I believe, relates back to the instrument known as the harp, right? The harp like an angel plays, right? Harp players arpeggiating chords, playing one note at a time. I believe that's where our term arpeggio comes from, the way harp players might approach a chord. Anyways, little linguistic trivia. Okay, so I want to give you a good example using arpeggios in my playing. I want to create a scenario in your mind where the chords of the song are being covered, right? Either another guitar player is strumming the chords or a piano player or both. And there's a bass player hitting the root note of each chord and plus some other notes, right? So you are free, you are liberated. You do not have to grab the chords anymore. You can do whatever you want, and doing arpeggios instead is a great choice. So I'm going to give you two approaches. One approach, and let's use House of the Rising Sun as an example. Why not? House of the Rising Sun, you've got your whole band playing it, and they're, the other guitar players got the A minor down here. One way to use an arpeggio in that context is to play an A minor chord higher up the neck. And I'm going to do an easy peasy one. 3 treble strings at the 5th fret. Those 3 notes, right? So the band is on the A minor, and I'm going to grab this version of A minor with one finger, my index finger, and I'm going to dance around. Okay, I'm arpeggiating an A minor chord, but the A minor chord I'm doing is a little bit up the neck. Hopefully that makes it a little more audible, right? I'm not bogged down here where the other guitar player is, okay? So in this case, I'm not doing a solo, I'm not doing anything fancy. I'm just contributing as a member of the band. I'm contributing notes from an A minor chord, but I'm doing it up the neck, and so that makes it more audible, a little higher frequency, right? And also, instead of strumming it, I'm doing individual sounds. Again, kind of a pretty sound. You're going to be able to hear yourself a little bit better. The listener will hear that pretty little sound of the individual notes. Very tasteful, okay? And then as the band changed to other chords, you could do those other chords up the neck. Right now, I'm just thinking of House of the Rising Sun. I'm thinking A minor at the 5th fret. For C, I'm thinking C in the F formation. 8, 8, 9 on the 3 treble strings. Next chord of House of the Rising Sun is a D major. I just took the C up 2 frets, 10, 10, 11. Next chord is an F major. I might do 8, 10, 10. Index finger 8 on the 1st string, 10 and 10 on the 2nd, 3rd strings. So the band is grinding away at House of the Rising Sun, bum, ba-da, bum, 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 bum. And I've got my A minor, C, D, F. Okay, it's a tasteful way. In my mind, I'm still kind of being a rhythm guitar player because I'm not improvising. Everything I'm doing is directly related to the chords. Could it kind of be described as lead guitar? A little bit, I guess. In my mind, though, I'm still I'm still part of the rhythm section. Okay, so that's half of the answer. Second half of the answer to your question is when it's time to play that solo, right? And using arpeggios to reflect the chords in the tune. And let me see, what is a good way to do this? The premise would be, and maybe Bruce, the premise would be that you've done some homework, that you know a few major arpeggio patterns and a few minor arpeggio patterns, which I will talk about shortly. Because this book came last Sunday. Can't wait to talk to you guys about the Mel Bay's complete book of guitar chords, scales, and arpeggios. So you've done some homework and you know a few different major arpeggios and a few different minor arpeggios, for example. And when it's time to play a guitar solo, that can be one tool in your toolbox. So because we're talking about A minor, let's I'm going to suggest I want to give you kind of a hip. Okay. You know what? Instead of reinventing the wheel, I'm going to turn to the arpeggio section of this book. Why not? And let's give you a direct example. And then I'll talk to you about I'll take a break from your questions for a minute. I'll tell you about how I'm enjoying this book, because I am very much enjoying this book. Okay. There we go. How about, okay, let's use this one. Okay, so remember, an A minor chord by definition is 3 notes. You could call it a minor triad if it makes you feel like a music professor. The 3 notes are A, C, and E, and there's one way to play them. Ring finger, 2nd string, 10th fret. That's your B string 10. Got to be your ring finger, because you want your index 8 on the 1st string. So far I've played A and C. E, you smart people, you're not going to be shocked to know that E is 12 on the E string, right? Our magic number 12. A, C, E, 10, 8, 12. Now notice I'm sliding into that first note. Why? I know, to dress it up a little bit. In fact, you could slide up to that 12 too. Because remember, the premise here is I'm limiting myself to those 3 notes. The band is banging on an A minor chord. I'm going to solo. The A minor chord goes by kind of fast in House of the Rising Sun. Bum, 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 bum. 2 beats and it's done. So that's not the best example for like using this exact technique. But okay, just because it's nice to have the chord last for 4 beats, 8 beats or something. Okay, so I know what my choices are: 10, 8, and 12. I know that I can slide into notes to give them some flavor, and so I'm gonna slide into 10 with my ring finger. I'm gonna slide into 12, right? Depending on your bending ability, I could bend 10 to sound like 12. You might say, hey, but that wasn't one of the notes in the arpeggio, but I'm picturing the arpeggio pattern in my mind, right? But instead of playing the 12, I'm bending to get the sound of the 12. Hopefully you notice that my bend here, which is a little painful, I'm using 3 fingers. It's a 3-finger bend. You can't and you shouldn't do it with 1 finger. Why do you want to do it with only 1 finger, right? You know, a bend is a very emotional, bluesy kind of tone. Okay, so Bruce, that's a thing that comes to mind. And in a minute, I'll tell you more about this book. But that's something that comes to mind in terms of making up a guitar solo, improvising with arpeggios in mind. You got to lay the groundwork, right? By practicing a variety of arpeggios, especially the majors and minors. You guys know how often major and minor chords show up in songs, you know? But it's a great question. Okay, so let me take a moment here and talk about this book. Like I said, it arrived last Sunday from good old Amazon. Where are we here? There we go. Okay. No, the binding did not look like this. I don't know why I assumed it was going to have a spiral binding, but now it does. $4.51. I laughed out loud. I brought it over to Staples in the morning. They had it for me later that afternoon. $4.51. You can't get out of the coffee shop for $4.51. But it's, you cannot imagine how happy it makes me to have a spiral binding on any book, especially a big fat book I intend to use a lot. So long story short, yeah, get yourself this book, $22.95. Splurge for a couple extra bucks for the spiral binding. I mean, you know, bring it to wherever place in your town will put a binding on for you. It's absolutely worth it. Okay, so the reason I got this book for myself, to be honest, but I knew deep down that I was going to use it to as a teacher, and then use it in this live stream as an example of what's a smart way to invest your time. Okay. This is how you get to know the fretboard. This is how you get fast fingers. This is how you get a better sense of radar, I call it, with your picking hand, so that you don't have to look at your picking hand, or you look at it less and less by practicing scales and arpeggios especially. But we'll talk about the chords. Okay, I'm going to keep this kind of short because, frankly, I intend to use this book in future live streams. So this will not be our last look at this book. Okay, so right on page 1, the C scales, you can see it's written in tab, regular notation, and the chord diagram kind of box. What do you call that? A neck diagram. I should know. I've only taught for a few decades. Anyways, written 3 different ways. Most of us are going to start off reading the tab and then hopefully quickly memorize the scale using the visual image up here. That's what I recommend anyways. So yeah, C, let's see, 4 different C major scales, from, you know, open position, 1s, 2s, 3s, and 0s, up to 7s, 8s, 9s, and 10s, right? How I would suggest using this book, because I want you to get it. Amazon doesn't give me any money for it. I'm promoting this book purely because I'm going to be using it, and it's going to make me a better guitar player, and I want to encourage you guys to become better guitar players too. So my plan is to go through this scale by scale, alternate picking with your right hand. You knew I was going to say that, right? Alternate picking with your right hand, with your picking hand, holding the pick the right way, a loose fist. Your thumb is doing all the work. Your fingers are all curled up. Your index finger isn't doing anything. Your index finger is just curled up. It's acting as a barrier. The pick is pointing perpendicular away from your thumb, so to speak. Okay, so hold the pick the right way, down, up picking. Left hand, the tab is great. If you want to know which finger to use, that's really important information, and that comes from the diagram. They put little white numbers inside the black dots. The white numbers 1 through 4. Index is 1, 2, 3, 4. Pinky is 4. Okay, you got to do it that way. Lots of times, which finger you use, you realize it's just common sense, right? But sometimes, not sometimes, there's often an occasion where you can imagine a few different possibilities. Just do what the book says. Even though you could argue, well, but what about this finger? What about this? You got to pick one and get good at it, right? So just do what the book says. you just trust Mel Bay. In Mel we trust. There you go. Okay, arpeggios. That's the next section of the book. And now the cool thing here, the scales were all major scales. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing. Oh no, I'm so sorry. Major scales is the first section. Minor scales is the second section of the scales, and then, well, they call them rock scales, which is the minor pentatonic, is the third section. That's great. So 3 sections of scales. Arpeggios, they line them all up. I know you can't read this too clearly. I know. C major arpeggios, C minor, C7, C diminished, C augmented. You don't have to know what all this stuff means. You don't have to know, when you're ever going to use a C augmented chord. Practicing the arpeggio is great for your ear, great for your fingers. It's great for your mind, man. Great for your brain, your mind and your brain and your head. So again, they don't, in this case, it's all diagram based. There's no tab, but yeah, the tab there's so much jumping around. The tab might be almost more confusing. You just go by the diagrams, starting from the lowest sound, moving up to the highest sound. Definitely use whatever finger they recommend. Okay, and last but not least, the chord section. I know I'm jumping around here, but don't worry. We will return to this. We'll do a deeper dive. In fact, what I'd like to do is I'd like to share with you that my practice, my exact practice plan, and encourage you guys to follow it. Maybe I could show you some modified versions, like, hey, you got 5 minutes, do this. You got half an hour, do this. If something seems easy, great. Here's how you take it to the next level. The chords are so interesting in how they categorize them. Okay, C major chords. Can I put this up here? That just makes more sense. And again, I know you guys might not be able to read this. That's okay. They divide up the chords into 4 different types of chords. They're all C major chords. Melody chords, inside chords, rhythm chords, bottom 4 string chords. Will you need all of these in the near future? No. Is it a great workout for your mind and your fingers? Yes. Let's start with the obvious. Bottom 4 string chords. They mean the 4 fat strings. How to play C major chords on the 4 fat strings. 3 different options there. Rhythm chords. Rhythm chords, I think the best way to describe those are 5 or 6 string chords where the intention is just to make a big full sound as part of, say, a rhythm section in a band. You're not trying to make the chords sparkle or shine in any special way. Very functional. Chunk, 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 strumming on 5 or 6 strings. That's where bar chords show up here. Inside chords. Chords that focus on the 4 inside strings. Interesting approach. And lastly, melody chords. This ties in with the whole chord melody arrangement kind of thing, that book I'm working on, where you want to play a C major chord, but you want the highest note of that chord to reflect the melody of the song that you are performing. So it's not good enough just to play an old-fashioned C. You want to see where maybe the skinny first E string at the 8th fret, that note C, maybe you want to play a C major chord where that note is included because you're doing it as a guitar instrumental, and that's a priority to get that sound there. But you don't want to just play that note. You want to play that note and include other harmony notes that reflect the C major chord. That's what they mean by melody chords. Is this stuff academic? Totally. Is it awesome for your hands? Yeah, for sure. Okay. We will return to this subject a little bit later in tonight's live stream. All right. I feel like I'm talking a lot. Maybe it's thanks to it's caffeine free. My whistle is being wet tonight thanks to the clear, sparkling, and flowing waters of East Haven, Connecticut, Foxen Park, draft style root beer soda. Goes down smooth and easy. Okay. We have a poll. I've even talked about the poll. You guys have been voting. We got 36 votes. For those of you who haven't voted yet, those of you who are watching, listening, you're not checking out the chat exactly, that's totally fine. I thought I would bring some positive vibes to our poll of the week, poll question of the week. Let's look on the bright side. What is the compliment that you would most like to hear from a friend, loved one, stranger? And I threw out 4 options. I could have come up with, they limited me to four options here. The compliment you'd most like to get. Imagine someone saying to you, "Oh, that sounds just like the song." How about someone saying to you, "Oh, I wish I could do that." How about you play an original tune and the person says to you, "Wait, did you write that?" That's a pretty big compliment. And how about someone who just says, "You are so fast at the guitar"? Okay, so now's the time to vote. The votes it's spread out in a very interesting way at the moment. I love it. I love it. So I don't want to jinx the voting, but very, very cool responses. Okay. Deborah, I see your question, Deborah. Deborah says, "Is that a new book of yours on the music stand?" No, but it's the one I'm choosing to throw up here on the music stand in the hopes that someone would say something. The book you're seeing is currently, is published by Howe Leonard Publications, the largest music publisher in the world, I think. Certainly the largest one in the US. I wrote this book. That's me. And I want you to have a copy of it because it's a good book. It actually came out in 2021 and it can be yours. I have a whole box of them. So head over to my website, www.song-bike.com, and get yourself a copy. I will get your order and probably put it in the mail to you Monday morning. What is in this book? The book is called Easy Guitar Chord and Lead Tricks by me. The book is divided into 3 sections. Section 1, first position chord tricks, stuff using D and E minor and E and A. And there's about 4 of those. Part 2 might be the biggest section of the book, chord tricks, but up the neck stuff, including stuff with power chords, 1-finger major chords, 1-finger minor chords, a lot of cool stuff, some bluesy stuff. And part 3 is lead guitar tricks, doing stuff with double stops, different pentatonic boxes, turnarounds, and 2 modes, the Dorian mode and the Mixolydian mode. These are all kind of cute little lessons. And I think everyone should have a copy of this book. One thing that this book kind of reflects is I was a guitar teacher before YouTube, before the internet. And it was always important to me to have some 1-page lesson plans ready to go, because I would teach. The place I started at was half-hour guitar lessons, and it was not uncommon for me to do 8 or 10 half-hour guitar lessons in a row. Bam, bam. And so it was very important to me to have a bunch of stuff on hand, a variety of stuff that I could, at the end of the lesson or towards the very end of the lesson say, okay, we got 7 minutes left. Here's something that I can explain in 5 minutes. You can work on it for 2 minutes to show me that you get the idea, and then get out of here, kid. Next. So that is what I'm proud of in terms of this book. This book has so much stuff, that 1 page, 2 page, 2.5 pages, pretty specific concepts, pretty specific skills that you develop. It's not, endless exercises. It's not, just imagine you had a 24-minute guitar lesson and the teacher says, "You know what, you're doing great on that thing. Hey, here's a cool little thing that you might get a kick out of." That's what this book is full of. So yeah, head over to www.song-bike.com hammer-ons.com, and you can order a copy. And like I said, the orders, Monday. I got my box of books. I got my box of cardboard mailers. I got my stickers. I got my stamps.com account. I'm ready for you. It's a cool book. And of course, it comes with a video. Oh, the video is, you go to the Hal Leonard website and you enter your code and it gives you access to the video. You might get a kick out of the video because I use a bunch of different guitars in the video. Hal Leonard, when I filmed the video for the book, they said no talking. I was like, yeesh, okay, no talking. They just want me to bang out the pages of the book. Totally fine. But I used a few different guitars, including a buddy of mine had, I think he had just dropped off. He wanted to show me this new guitar he got. And so I snuck that into a couple of the pages, a couple of the videos. So yeah, the video is free when you buy the book. You get access to the video. Okay, so Deborah, thank you for setting me up there to to promote, to encourage students to pursue the study of the guitar. Okay, so I'm going to take a breath for a second. What I haven't done yet is to give you guys some of the highlights that I hope to get to in the next hour, including, what if James Taylor was your personal guitar teacher? What would that be like? I will tell you. What if you're on tour and you need a guitar and you're a rock star, but you need something to practice back in the hotel room? What would you get? I'll tell you. Oh, a segment I'm going to call Questions I Wish You Would Ask Me. And I got some examples of questions I wish you would ask me. Now, you guys ask great questions, but I thought it'd be kind of fun for you to hear, questions that I wonder why people never ask me, or I would really be so excited if people ask me. Here's another topic I hope to get to before the end of tonight. What's so hard about reading music? A lot of people make a big deal. They don't want to read music. They don't think they can read music. They wish they could read music. They admire people who know how to read music. What's so hard about reading music? Let's talk about it. Other things, I got a good play-along song of the week for you tonight. To Whet Your Appetite, the song we're going to play tonight was banned by multiple radio stations. They refused to play it. But we're going to play it. I know. Does that whet your appetite? If we have time, I want to do a follow-up to something I brought up a few months ago. It's more of a reminder than anything else. It's a little list of points I made regarding what it means to be an intermediate guitar player. I want to take just a couple minutes and remind you of that list. Because if you guys are like a lot of my students, it'll be a worthwhile few minutes to look at that list. What else? I have a student quote of the week I want to share with you. I have my own dumb question of the week. Never at a loss. It's one of my favorite things is coming up with a dumb question of the week. Comes a little too quickly some weeks, but I got dumb questions. I want to share a couple of cool exercises that I just got turned on to, and I want to share them with you. And of course, a segment that I love to call Some of the Coolest Guitar Players on YouTube. You guys know I really enjoy sharing a bunch of names and videos and background information of a variety of people. And this week's crop is just as varied and interesting as ever. I can't wait to share those names and faces and biographies with you guys. So that's all coming up in the next hour or so, Mr. Collier, Bill, thank you for your super chat. A super chat is a way for you to support what we are doing here. That's the $ down the bottom of the chat. Just click on that, and I thank you, Bill. Bill, I see your question. I'm going to get to that in a minute. I think. Max, you asked if there's a link for this book. No, just my website, www.song-bike.com. And you guys, I don't push my website very much, but the website is it's one of those deals where you can become a member and access all the stuff that you can't get on YouTube. And my my accountant and my marketing friend, they all say I should push my website more, and I will. So I just pushed it. There you go. Head over to the website, become a member. $10 a month. You get access to lots of cool stuff, and I'll be posting more and more stuff on that website as time goes on. Rock Lobster says, can you hear the tone in different brands of strings? Good question. Short answer, yeah. Especially if there's some big differences in the thickness, in the exact metal being used, phosphor bronze versus bright bronze, other stuff. I've used the same strings for long enough now that probably anything else that I used would be kind of would be a shock to the system. It probably would sound different. It's tricky. Of all the things, by the time you decide it's time for new strings, you take all your old strings off, you put your new strings on, you get them tuned up, you start playing. Number one, they sound like bright, shiny new strings. It's really hard to compare them with how your previous strings sounded when they were brand new, right? It can be kind of tricky. But there are lots of brands of strings, and in general, they're all good. The company, the string, I use D'Addario EJ16 acoustic strings, the 12 gauge, also known as light gauge. They're great strings. I also just like D'Addario as a company for a bunch of reasons, including that when I first opened my music shop in 2006, they were happy to do business with me, even though I was a nobody and I was buying, a very small quantity of strings to stock my store. They were happy to do business with me, and that goes a long way in my book. And then just other things I've learned about D'Addario over the years. They're just a cool company. But they are obviously one of many, many companies out there. So yeah, to get back to your exact question, different brands of strings are going to have different tones. And I encourage you guys to try. Unlike a pick, though, it's really easy to try different picks and come to all sorts of conclusions instantly, right? Strings, it's a little trickier. They're more expensive. They're not that expensive, but they're more expensive than picks, right? And it takes longer to get them on or off. A wise man once said to me, on acoustic guitar, your two treble strings, the E and the B strings, are plain steel. Those are probably going to sound about the same with every brand of string, right? In terms of the exact tone, it's a plain steel string. So over the years, I've thought about that, and I can't argue against it. I don't know what the argument against that would be, in terms of the exact tone. So it could be that what we're really determining is the sound of the four bass strings, So yeah. Okay. I'm scrolling here. Willie, I see your question. Willie says, Jonathan, are there any practice routines you recommend for 12-string acoustic? No, but that doesn't mean there aren't any out there. I really never. I only play a 12-string when I stumble across one once in a while. So, I mean, no. I would just say, anything you do in a 6-string guitar. Obviously, if you're using the 12-string, playing 12-string acoustic, you're doing fingerstyle like Leo Kottke, then the right hand finger picking is going to be your priority. 12-string electric, you're playing all those Roger McGuinn licks from the Byrds, or Beatles licks, then the playing with the pick, any pick related exercise are going to be significant. But no, I don't have anything in particular. I'd be a little surprised if there are truly unique exercises just because it's 12 strings. I'd be surprised, unless they were exercises that were helping you play very specific 12-string songs, like say, hey, you want to learn this Leo Kottke song? Here's a bunch of exercises that will help you with that song, for example. You guys know Leo Kottke, right? Leo Kottke, his distant relative, actually wrote the national anthem, Francis Scott Key. I kid. But yeah, Leo Kaki. The first name that comes to mind when I think of 12-string guitar, along with Roger McGuinn from the Byrds. Scott Rhodes says that he saw an interesting looking book called 12-String Method. Yeah, I have no doubt that there's stuff marketed for 12-string folks. But my instinct is to practice everything you'd practice for 6-string. Okay. Hey, some of you guys, Rock Lobster says he has a copy of the book. Thank you, Mr. Lobster. Joseph Martinez, you got your copy. Excellent. Oh, Joseph, are you in, I don't want to identify where you live, but I think I remember sending yours to you. It's quite a ways from Connecticut. So I'm glad it got there safe and sound. Very exciting. I am nothing like dropping it in the mailbox and saying, goodbye, little book. Go see the world. I love it. Okay. Charlie says, why do they call cowboy chords cowboy chords? Yeah. Is it those big, the big strummy country sounds that you get, you're sitting around the campfire strumming those big chords, singing Home on the Range, cowboy chords. Yeah, I guess couldn't tell you. You guys know that the guitar, in a way, was a woman's instrument first. It was, especially in, Western European culture, it was more common for a woman to be playing a small guitar, what we would call a parlor-sized guitar, in her parlor, than it would be for a guy to be playing a big, huge guitar, because there were no big, huge guitars, because why would there be a big, huge guitar? So the guitar as we know it today has quite a history. And so what we call cowboy chords were almost certainly being played by people before there was even such a thing as cowboys, certainly before the guitar ever made it to the United States of America. So yeah, we call them cowboy chords, but that's not the whole story for sure. Rick says, how do you know when it's time to replace your frets on your guitar? Yeah. Most all of us are going to leave dents in the first 3 frets first. Most of us spend a lot of time down there. And when you change strings, that's a good time to look at them. And sometimes just the naked eye, you can really see dents in the frets. Certainly by running your finger, you can feel them. Look at it as a badge of honor. If you've worn down your frets, it's a badge of honor. Doesn't mean you have to replace them right away. But that's how you know that the strings are winning the battle against the fret metal. So when it's time to replace them, I wouldn't worry about it until you start to have some problems. So what would the problems be? Chronic buzzing, where you're doing everything the same way you usually do. You're pressing down, the same firmness, the same location, but you're getting buzzing. That's the first thing that comes to mind. In a perfect world, you'd have a neighbor who's a guitar tech or a luthier, and you just walk over, to their house and say, hey, do I need new frets? And they say, yep. And you give them their guitar, and they give it back to you the next day with, you don't have to replace all the frets, obviously, right? Just the frets that are getting worn out. It's extremely possible that leveling, crowning, polishing is the first step. I think I heard recently that before you actually replace the actual metal fret, you can usually maybe twice, you can smooth it out, essentially file them, shape them, and you're good to go. And you can get away with doing that twice before you actually have to replace the fret. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's what I heard. You guys know I'm a fan of Know Your Gear, the YouTube podcast, Know Your Gear. And I think that's what he said. Phil McKnight, who is the podcaster, he has spent a lot of years repairing guitars. And I think I heard him say that recently, that you can get away with 2 of those, crowning and filing and polishing, 2 of those before you actually have to replace the fret. So stainless steel frets are one solution. Stainless steel frets are more expensive. It's possible you could ask, say the day comes you do need to replace the frets, you could ask the guitar tech, hey, could I just replace it with stainless steel? I mean, if it's all the same, they might say, sure. Stainless steel is tougher for them to work on. It's a harder metal. So they might be like, I'd rather not do stainless steel. I don't know if there's any argument to having some of your frets stainless steel and the others not stainless steel. I don't think there's any reason why you can't, sort of one at a time replace them with stainless steel. I don't see why not. Anyways, worth asking. Yeah, Blair is mentioning there are tools for checking the level of the frets. Yeah, and I don't want to get out of my comfort zone. Again, the ideal is bring it to a guitar tech and just ask them. If you look at your frets, say when the strings are off, and every fret in the whole guitar looks the exact same, smooth, shiny, new, then you're set. But examine the first 2 or 3 frets, and those are the ones where you're most likely to see some sort of divot or flattening out. And that, again, that doesn't mean you have to replace that fret. But that would bring it to a guitar tech and say, hey, should I do anything about this? Or can you just sort of crown and polish them? Tons of videos on YouTube on this type of fret maintenance. So I would defer to those. And any guitar repair videos from the Know Your Gear YouTube channel, I would recommend, because he sounds like he knows what he's talking about. Hey, now is as good a time as any to say thank you to Beginner Guitar Lessons for being our moderator. Thank you, Beginner Guitar Lessons. And while we're on the subject of Beginner Guitar Lessons, Beginner Guitar Lessons, you get Student Quote of the Week. And here's some that you said that struck me. In our guitar lesson, we were talking about focusing your eyes on your fretting hand, your left hand, versus focusing on your right hand. And you said some that comment here. You said, I can't remember the last time I looked at my right hand. Which, yeah, I mean, that's a good position to be in. If in general your eyes are on your fretting hand or your music or your computer screen or both, and you're trusting your right hand more and more, that's excellent. That's excellent. I mean, that day is going to come when you are doing lots of stuff with almost no attention to your right hand. That day is going to come. But I just liked how you said, I can't remember the last time I looked at my right hand. I thought, ooh, that could be a student quote of the week. I like that. Okay. Hey, now is as good a time as any to jump into our play along song of the week. If not now, when? And I told you guys that this song was banned from certain radio stations that would not play the song when it came out. And as someone in the chat, I saw someone knew what song I was talking about. Our first ever instrumental guitar play along here on the SongBike YouTube guitar Q&A live stream. Rumble by Link Wray. What an interesting dude. Okay. Let's get right into it, and then we'll talk a little bit about the history of this tune. But there is history. Okay, as a guitar teacher, I love this tune. As a guitar player, I love this tune. All right. Some of you know this tune, and you're like, oh, we're going to rock out with Rumble. Some of you do, or some of you think you do not know this tune, and yet you do. You do. Remember when Quentin Tarantino used this in Pulp Fiction? A lot of people, that was either the first time they ever heard, Rumble, or it sort of really got it into your consciousness, right? That was like, oh yeah, that's a song, but it was in that movie, Pulp Fiction. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, what do you need for Rumble? You need 4 chords: D, E, A, and B7. And I'm hoping that you guys are good to go on the first three. B7, there you go. There's the B7 chord right there. And when you strum B7, you're not going to strum the fat string, but I'm going to draw a circle around the root note, the note B on the A string, 5th string, 2nd fret. Okay, so this preparation moment right here is going to be pretty quick. In terms of your left-hand chords, like I said, you got D, E, and A, and B7. If you want to be really like the cool kids, when you strum the D chord, don't strum the skinny 1st string. You can include the 5th string, the A string, but don't include the skinny 1st string, even though you can fret it. In fact, I would fret it, but don't include it. We'll talk about why. If you do strum it, it doesn't hurt the song at all. But if you can avoid the skinny 1st string, avoid it. We'll talk about why, at the end. D, E, A. By the way, when you're switching from D to E, which you do multiple times in this tune, your index finger can just glide back from the 3rd string 2nd fret to the 3rd string 1st fret. See if you can make that a habit. Anytime you go from D to E or vice versa, E to D, your index finger just gliding without actually leaving the guitar. Okay, the significance of the B7, unlike the other chords where he's just banging the chord nice, loud, and proud, when he gets to the B7, he hits the root note first, remember 5th string 2nd fret, middle finger, and then he does what I call a slow drag across the 4 treble strings for dramatic effect, okay? Everything else is just what you see in the paper. D, D, E. But again, that B7. Okay, now here's where it gets especially good. Wray ends the chord sequence with a great run. He just plays E minor pentatonic scale, descending, with down-up picking and a cool little bend at the end. Use your first 2 fingers. See what I wrote there? Index finger playing all the 2s, middle finger playing all the 3s. Down-up picking. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. The exception would be, at the very end, I encourage you to go down, down. For 2 reasons. That emphatic sound on that final 0 at the end. Also, remember, the whole reason why we get good at down-up picking is for fast stuff, so we can play fast stuff smoothly. If a song has 2 notes that are not rapid fire, there's nothing wrong with doing one as a down and the next one as a down. Why not? It sounds great. But everything else, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Okay, that is the whole tune. The only thing I'm omitting is I call it a little sound effect, for lack of a better term, that Wray does. I'll show you later, but let's get into this and actually play it. Okay, you ready? The timing, I could sit here and analyze the timing, but I think the easiest thing would be to play it, because that is the whole tune. I'm going to loop it around a few times, and you'll pick up on the timing. If you've never heard the song before, that is okay. All right, you ready? Let's just do it. On the count of 2. On the count of 2, I'm going to go D, D, E. Okay? I'll see you on the other side. 1, 2. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. A chord. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. 4. Here comes the last one. D, D, E7, 3, 4, 1. Here comes the run. And then just starts over. 2, 3, 4. Second time. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. 2, 3, 4. Last time. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. 2. Okay, so how could that be banned from the radio, you ask? How is that possible? Well, a long time ago, 1958, the West Side Story musical was in the American consciousness, and the name Rumble, chosen by the daughter of the record executive, because it reminded her of the fight scene in West Side Story, she said, let's call it Rumble, and they went with that name, and radio stations were a little on edge, calling a song Rumble with distorted guitar, which is a whole nother conversation. In the aggressive approach that Link Wray was taking here, some radio stations said, nope, we're not going to play that. The teenagers will riot. We'll be responsible for hooliganism. We're not going to play it. And they didn't. Now, plenty of radio stations did play it. But you tell me, when has there ever been an instrumental that many radio stations refuse to play because of the effect it might have on the audience? I know of none other instrumentals. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit about the history, a little bit about the music theory, a little bit about I guess that covers it. Okay, music theory. This song is basically built on a 12-bar blues concept in E. Now, you might say, what? E is not even the first chord. E is not even the most common chord. I know, but wait. In the key of E, a typical 12-bar bluesy form would involve an E, A, and B, or E7, A7, and B7 if you want to actually be bluesy, right? So with E, A, and B representing our 1, 4, and 5, this takes on the appearance of a 12-bar blues structure. The effect of the D is an awesome effect. In the key of E, the D chord would be known as the flat 7 chord. It's as if we went to the 7th note of an E scale, which would be D sharp. We flattened it, made it a D instead, and then played a D major chord. That's why the chord would be called a flat 7 chord, a flatted 7 chord. It's a real rock and roll sound, my friends. I mean, that D has a really profound effect in this context. It's a blues in E, basically, with just a raunchy D chord in our face over and over and over again. Great choice. So that is my argument, my explanation for why this tune is right on the edge of blues and rock and roll. It certainly came directly from the blues form, but there's something just raw about not just playing the D chord, but about building the song on the inclusion of that D chord. Okay, and then to top it all off, that's basically an E blues scale minus the blue notes. Well, if you take an E blues scale and take away the blue notes, the flat 5 notes, you're left with an E minor pentatonic scale, and that's what that is, you know? Okay, so I think that's all I want to say about it in terms of music theory. You can see why a guitar teacher would get a kick out of this, right? 4 really important chords and a really important scale that you have to learn it anyways. Why not learn it in the context of Rumble by Link Wray from 1958, possibly recorded in 1954, but I think 1958 was when it became, I'm a little sketchy on the exact timing. But whenever West Side Story came out, it must have coincided, relatively around the same time. Okay, so a little bit of history. Wray from North Carolina, I believe, perfectly good working guitar player, found himself playing a dance at a roller rink, and they needed to fill some time. Is it possible it was being broadcast on the radio? Maybe. They needed to fill some time. They had played all their songs, but the promoter said, keep playing. And this was the result. The dance called the stroll. Wray wanted to play something that would be appropriate for that dance, not my field of expertise. And this beat, that dun, 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 that was the beat that came to mind. And so in theory, I guess the legend is that he came up with this idea based on that sound. He wanted a stroll type of song and started banging out these chords, and the crowd went wild. What seems to be pretty clear is he had his amp turned up to 10, so he could be heard, right? Well, if you hit chords hard enough with the amp turned up to 10, that's rock and roll, my friends. Well, it's blues. It's blues, and it gave birth to rock and roll. Remember, Chicago nightclubs, blues players coming up from the South, they're playing the music they know, but now they're playing it in a loud urban environment. So they turn their Fender amps up to 10. The sound distorts, right? So it seems pretty clear that Wray found himself in that same situation, turn up to 10. But let's face it, you're going to maybe get even more distortion depending on how hard you hit the guitar. Maybe add a little extra to the distortion. Well, the kids went nuts. And Link and friends decide, well, we got a good song in our hands, let's record it. Well, now you're in the recording studio. It does not make sense to turn the amplifier up to 10. So the legend, depending on the story that you believe, is Wray took a switchblade knife. Because don't we all carry a switchblade knife? And stabbed, not the grill of his amplifier, the grill, the screen, that's not going to make any change. He stabbed the speaker of his amplifier. And by stabbing it, even at a lower volume, it's going to get that raunchy, distorted sound. That's the legend. I don't know. And recorded the song. That distorted guitar sound in that time would have been considered a mistake. Like, oh, you made the record wrong, right? You got to go back and fix it. A typical record company executive, or anybody would have that reaction, like, oh, you made a mistake in the engineering. But they wanted that sound, right? So it lands on the lap of a DJ. And what's their reaction going to be? The guitar, they possibly have never heard a guitar sounding that punk, right? That heavy metal, right? They've never heard the guitar sound that way. The name of the song is Rumble. The whole thing has this aggressive feel to it. He's just grinding home this melody in general. That's the whole tune. He just grinds it home. At the end, he runs out of ideas. So he cranks up the tremolo. So all of a sudden the sound starts blah, 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 like that, because I don't mean to say he ran out of ideas, but that was his final idea. I know what I'll do. I'll just, crank up the tremolo on the amp to get that effect. And then the one thing I'm not telling you, the one thing he did that broke out of this, if anything, it just added to the tension. During this segment of the tune, the DDE section, or specifically, specifically towards the end of the tune, instead of the second DDE that I'm indicating with my fingers right there, he plays the first one, and then he goes into that move. He grabs an E chord at the 12th fret, 12 and 12 on the two treble strings, 13 on the third string, 12, 12, 13. And he just begins strumming down and up as fast as he can, presumably. Well, as a teacher, I'd recommend having a light grip on the pick. And it keeps repeating it and sliding up during this whole segment until when he would have come in on the A chord right there. You can hear it in the recording. Okay, so that was that little move. That certainly did not calm down emotions, you know. So there you go. Link Wray. For those of you who might not have seen a very interesting rock and roll guitar documentary called It Might Get Loud, this specific song gets royal treatment in that movie. And I encourage you guys to all see the movie. I don't think I'm spoiling the movie for anyone, but when I tell you that Jimmy Page singles out this song and as the song that had as one of the songs that had a profound effect on his young life as a guitar player. And I don't know, it's just a very pure moment when Jimmy Page puts on, I guess I think it might have been the 45 RPM record of Rumble, and looks into the camera and just has his smile is mile wide. He's just pointing at the record player like, that's it. That's it. That's how it's done. You know, very cool moment in that movie. I recommend the whole movie. Very cool moment. There is a documentary, and I'm sorry, I'll find out the name of it, and I'll put it in the description of this video. There's a documentary that's about Native American musicians in American popular music, and Link Wray is one of the featured musicians in that documentary. Randy says there's a couple of good YouTube videos of Link Wray playing Rumble. Yeah, wearing black leather, sunglasses. Yeah, this song, you know, I get the feeling this reflects, you know, where he's coming from. He ended up moving overseas to the Netherlands. I believe he ultimately relocated to Europe and ultimately, you know, lived the rest of his life overseas. I don't know 100% why. I'm sure there's a whole story there. I believe I got a comment on my YouTube video about Rumble from his daughter, just thanking me for keeping his spirit alive, something like that. Very nice email. I'm sorry, I don't remember. I guess if we went to my YouTube video on how to play this song, I guess it's in those comments. I don't know how else she would have heard of me. I thought, wow, Link Wray's daughter. Wow, how cool. Okay, so there you go, everybody. Our guitar play along of the night, Rumble by Link Wray. Hey, the fact that I did it here on acoustic guitar is not crazy, because if you listen carefully to the recording, there is an acoustic guitar playing constantly in the background. This sure sounds like an acoustic guitar. Doing that kind of strumming along with the drums, and I assume a stand-up upright bass. Yeah. Okay. So hey, now is as good a time as any to remind you guys that we have done these guitar play-alongs for quite some time, and here's a list. Every few episodes, I want to throw this up here. There's a list of all the tunes that you and I have done over these many weeks. Hold on here. Weeks and months of live streaming. Look at all those tunes. I'm not going to read them all because there's a lot of them, dozens, right? But we have done a lot of tunes. So here's a quick way that you can see a master list. I mean, I know I'm holding it up right here. You can do a screenshot, take a good look at it. I'll put it as close to the camera as is reasonable. I made a Spotify playlist. If you go to Spotify, I think, well, there's a link in the description of this video. All of these songs are on the Spotify playlist. The original versions, you know, or the versions I use as a reference point. It's a lot of songs, man. So if you're looking for songs to add to your repertoire, great collection. I specifically chose every one of these songs very carefully. This is a curated list. I love saying curated. This is a curated list. Because in my mind, these songs are about as clear and simple as popular music gets. You know, relatively few chords, relatively simple strumming. If they have any riffs, they're relatively easy riffs. Put it this way, I don't know songs any easier than these, you know. Great for beginners. Even if you're a hotshot guitar player, you know, here's a quick way to add 5 songs, 10, 20 songs to your set list. You know, they're all pretty straightforward tunes. The number in parentheses is the live stream number where we cover that tune. So for instance, Knocking on Heaven's Door was the SongBike Guitar Q&A live stream number 21. Okay, a lot of tunes there. So I'll find a way to make that list more accessible, because that's going to be a pretty big list. But anyways, Spotify, for those of you who use Spotify, that's one way to see you know, the master copy of all those, master list, so to speak. Okay. Hey, I want to say a few thank yous. You guys have been very generous with some super chats just recently. William Collier, William, thank you for your super chat donation. Randy, thank you for yours. I'm throwing you guys some hearts. Rock Lobster, thank you for yours. My little computer mouse is acting weird. There we go. Okay. I'm going to pause for the cause here. Again, the crystal clear waters of East Haven, Connecticut have resulted in Fox and Park's draft style root beer, caffeine-free soda. Fox and Park has neither offered me a sponsorship deal, but neither have they told me to stop describing them as the taste of East Haven. So maybe it's all for the best. Maybe I'm just not on their radar, and that's probably a good thing. Okay. I am here for your questions, my friends, but I have a few more topics to talk about in between your questions. Scott Rhodes says that his friend used to babysit for Link Wray's kid. Wow. Very cool. Wendy says, is it cheating to do pull-offs instead of upstrokes? It is not cheating. If you're talking specifically about rumble, it's not cheating at all. Pull-offs are going to have a smoother sound. That constant down at picking is going to have more of an aggressive sound. But if you are in a band covering rumble, you're going to play that thing I showed you at least 3 or 4 times. You know what I mean? So, you know, anything you do to keep it fresh and interesting in your head is a good idea, you know? And certainly the average audience member is not going to notice that you're doing pull-offs instead of alternate picking. So I would say go for it, 100%. That's a great point. Yeah, Bruce, I see your question. Bruce says, I love music theory. Can you recommend any favorite books for a deep dive into music theory? No, not because they don't exist. It's just that I have not dug too deeply myself. What I will recommend, and I think I asked you guys, I forget. I definitely recommend a book that specifically is aimed at guitar players. So I just, it's in my blind spot, so to speak. I really would love to, you know, check out 3 or 4 and then choose one to recommend to you guys. I also want to write my own. So, you know, if I check out enough, I'll probably see what I like and see what I don't like. Willie is asking a dumb question. It's not a dumb question though, but he prefaced it that way. Can you improve the sound of your bass guitar by changing to a bone nut? No, but not because I know much about science. The nut, I know bone nuts seem to be the hip thing nowadays. And I have no doubt that the material of the nut has an effect on your open strings. In the case of a bass, if you're playing a 4-string bass, it's going to affect 4 sounds of all the sounds. It's going to affect the sound of your 4 open strings. Remember the nut, you know, this piece right here at the end of the fretboard. Most of us, it's white. No matter what it's made out of, it's white or off-white, right? As soon as you fret a string, the nut material doesn't matter anymore, right? It's irrelevant because it's not in play, right? Your finger is the new nut, So I don't doubt that a bone nut creates a different sound on the open string than other synthetic materials. I don't doubt that. My instinct is that it's not a profound difference. That different strings would be more of a profound difference. Having an EQ pedal or an EQ of some sort is going to give you so much more control over your tone than the nut. So again, I'm not going to say it makes no difference. So it's worth thinking about, but I wouldn't assume that that's going to be the get you the magic sound that you just couldn't get any other way. I wouldn't assume that. That's it. Music Fan knows. Music Fan says nut material only matters when playing an open string. That's true. So Scott Rhodes says, so when we play guitar, we become nuts. Sounds right. Yes. If I had my little sound effect. Joke of the night. When we play the guitar, we all become nuts. You got it. Hey, DJ is suggesting that Tom Kolb Guitar Theory book is the best from Hal Leonard. Tom Kolb. So yeah, so check it out. That's what I want. I want you guys to recommend what you have found that works. So now that's on my radar. Excellent. Bruce is asking about the t-shirts. Yeah, I got to finish up my chord melody book. I'm done with the proofreading. I'm done. I've chosen the Christmas songs. I think that I'm going to include 2 Christmas songs to round out the 30 songs. So at this point, ultimately what's left is filming the videos, 30 little videos of each chord melody thing. So that's where my head is at. So later in the summer, I'll get my merch up and going, and I'll set up the Patreon account so you guys can get some SongBike merchandise. Believe me, I'm excited. I'm excited about it. I just my little brain, in a way, I have a job already, which is teaching guitar 6 days a week, and that's my little brain gets so revved up by doing that all day long, Monday through Saturday, that I have like brain space for one other thing per week. and I wish I'd know what to do about that. So right now the merch is the second priority down, and the chord melody book is the first priority. And that's going great. I can't wait to share that with you guys. Okay, now we're not going to wrap up too soon. Don't worry, but I want to bang out a couple of other things, if you don't mind, on my little agenda here. So let's do this. What if James Taylor was your guitar teacher? What would that be like if James Taylor was your guitar teacher? Well, I can show you what it would be like. I'm going to put a link in the description of this video of James Taylor teaching guitar lessons. You might remember I mentioned this last week, 2 weeks ago, that James Taylor was one of the only guitar players, really one of the first famous musicians, songwriter, guitar players that I ever saw teaching his own songs on YouTube. And so you don't have to wait for me. You just do a YouTube search for James Taylor guitar lesson. And the one I chose that I'm going to share with you guys is him teaching Fire and Rain. There's a camera inside the guitar, so you can see, from the inside point of view, which fingers he's using. He talks a little bit about his left hand chord fingering. Fascinating, great to watch. He doesn't talk the way a teacher would talk a lot. He doesn't hold your hand and walk you through it. He simply plays it a little bit slowly, no vocals, a great shot, great letting, extremely professionally well done. It's great. He doesn't walk you through it. It's like a chance you get to sit there and get a very intimate look at James Taylor's fingers as he plays the song. No tab, no nothing. You're kind of on your own, and yet you can see everything right there. So if James Taylor was your guitar teacher, I guess that's a little bit about what it would be like. He'd be showing you stuff, but it would be up to you to to pause him and say, wait a minute, wait, what was that? What was that thing you just did? Slow down, So I highly encourage you guys to check it out. Whether or not you're a big James Taylor fan, it's fun to see. It's fun to see a song come to life. It's fun to see the camera angles, especially from the inside of the guitar. How cool is that? Non sequitur. I knew a singer-songwriter named James Taylor who had to use a different name because there's not room for a whole lot of James Taylors out there trying to make a name for themselves in the acoustic guitar singer-songwriter market. So we used a different name because what are you going to do if your name is James Taylor? You're kind of tricky, right? So as opposed to someone changing the name to sound, cool or something, in his case, he had to find another name. Okay, so that was on my agenda. Another thing on my agenda tonight. So you're on tour. Maybe you're famous. Maybe you're not famous, but you want a guitar to play in your hotel room, right? And you're going to be away from home for a long time. You didn't bring your guitar. What do you do? Well, how about Alex Skolnick's solution? One of you guys mentioned Alex Skolnick last week, I believe. His band Testament is how a lot of people came to know Alex Skolnick. I never really knew much about his career, but recently I've been following him on social media, and we're seems like we're about the same age, give or take, and I kind of like how he's presenting himself on social media. And so one thing that caught my eye was the guitar he bought for himself, relatively inexpensive guitar, to play back in his hotel room or in the tour bus or whatever while he's on this European tour. So what did he buy? Again, I'll put a link in the description. He bought himself, I believe, I know it's a Cordoba nylon string guitar, and I believe I've narrowed it down to a specific model, the Fusion 5 model. So a Cordoba Fusion 5 Jet. Nylon string guitar, very sharp black color, electric acoustic, so you could plug it in, and he did plug it in. You can see him on Instagram. If you follow Alex Skolnick on Instagram, you can see him playing, and he mentioned that he's using an amp called a Nux brand. I don't really know Nux Audio, N-U-X, and as in Nancy, Nux Audio Bluetooth amp. Sounds good to me. So that's what you do. You get yourself a guitar that you can play. Maybe leave it behind, maybe sell it to somebody before you leave, no reason necessarily to bring it back to your home, back in the States. So that's one solution, Sweetwater had it for, I think, about $500 or $600. So again, I'll be putting the link to that in the description. So there you go. When pros need a guitar, and there's no reason for them to spend $1 million, right? It's a hotel room guitar. It's a tour bus guitar, but why not? Okay. Looking at the chat real quick here. Okay, Bruce, thank you for your super chat. I appreciate that. The first responders are responding, as they should. I'm back in our Main Street studio here in small town Connecticut, and the ambulance barn and the fire department right across the street. Now you know. Okay, questions I wish you would ask me. Not you personally, but in general. I thought that would be a provocative kind of clickbait kind of concept to throw out there. Questions I wish my students would ask me. You ever wondered what it's like to be me? Questions I wish people would ask me. So here's some questions that in general, I think it's fair to say no one has ever asked me these questions, or they have maybe not quite as directly as I'm putting here. So here's half a dozen questions I wish people ask me. Let me see if I should put these in any particular order. Nah. It's been a long day. I don't want to put them in any particular order. I wish someone asked me how much I practiced when I was starting off on the guitar. And the reason I wish someone would ask me is because if you only knew how much I practiced, I am not a natural player, my friends. I do not have a gift. I really don't. My gift, my superpower, is I have the ability to sit in a chair and do the same thing for hours. That's my superpower. I practice so much. No one ever asked me, I guess the assumption is people assume I practice a lot just in general. And there might even be this notion that I'm gifted, or that guitar teachers or professional guitar players are somehow gifted in some unique way. I practice so much, so much. For sure, I drove one roommate to not be my roommate anymore. Yeah, I practice a lot. So no one asked me about that, but yeah, so much. Okay, here's another question no one asked me. What is my goal as a teacher? What's my goal for a student? Now, to be fair, sometimes I come out and tell someone what my goal is, like in a very explicit way, like, "Ooh, I'd love to see how good you can get at this particular thing by the end of the summer," But that's only one tiny response. So no one ever asked me like what my goal is, as a teacher, in the broadest sense, like, oh, make the world a better place. Which, yeah, I do feel like if any of us are sitting playing our guitar, the world is at least a little bit better, if not a lot better. And to more specific, like, is my goal. Like one kid said to me one time, he said, I don't think I'm gonna be a professional guitar player. That's not my goal. I said, oh, that's okay. He said, it is? He was kind of surprised to know that I wasn't disappointed. I was a little disappointed. I was like, dude, you're 12. Never say never, man, But I said, no, man, I hope you're a doctor, lawyer. I mean, whatever. I hope you're whatever you want to be. I also hope that when you come home from that, you have something there waiting for you that you can just sit and enjoy, and it'd be kind of cool if it was a guitar that'd make me feel like I serve some purpose. He said, oh, okay, but when I sit with a student, I have a variety of large, medium, and small goals. No one ever asked me though. I don't know. Okay, here's something that no one ever asked me. Can you just play any song? Like, do I know everything? And again, there might be this vague assumption that, like, well, you're the guitar. I mean, clearly you've passed some test, haven't you? You've been vetted by somebody, right? It's not possible that you taught yourself how to play and then you hung out a shingle and the rest is history. That's not possible, is it, Jonathan? So no, you'd be amazed at the variety of guitar things I either can't do, never pursued, don't fully understand. I don't want to put too fine a point on it. No one ever asked me, what my, so I don't want there to be this assumption that, I know everything, I can do everything. There's some guitar players out there who are pretty darn versatile, and give you the illusion that they can do everything, because darn it, they really seem like they can do a lot of stuff, and they can. And believe me, I watch those guys too, like, holy cow, man, that's leave some for the rest of us, But yeah, no one ever asked me, like, if can I just do everything? One time I said to a student that either I had just taken a lesson myself, or that I made some mention of me taking lessons, in the present. He said, why would you take lessons? I said, oh, my child. Yeah. I would love nothing more than to take lessons on the guitar, all with the right person and the right stuff. Oh my God, I would love it. Here's a question that I wish people would ask me. I wish a student would say to me, how do I know if I'm getting better at the guitar? Or how should I judge my progress? And again, that's a subject that comes up sort of sometimes, but I rarely hear that exact question. How do I know if I'm getting better at this stuff? In general, I hear the opposite. I hear, I'm not getting better, I suck. I'm getting better so incredibly painfully slowly that I'm frustrated. I hear that more often. So, but if someone said to me, well, is there an objective way to know if I'm getting better? Is there something I'm missing? Am I getting better, but I don't know I'm getting better? And I would love to talk about that. So I have a bunch of responses to that. Recording yourself, working with a metronome, getting help with realistic goals so that you can see concrete progress, undeniable progress on certain things, and you don't judge all your progress on one thing, you know. I've never seen a student get worse, although I swear this one student, I'm still on the fence. This is like a long time ago. I was not a very experienced teacher, but the student really somehow, this is 30 years ago, but the students somehow seemed to almost be getting worse. But you know what? I was so green as a teacher. I wish I could go back, and I'm sure there are things I could have done differently. I don't know. Okay. Another question. Oh, here's a concrete question that almost nobody has ever asked me in decades. It explicitly asked me, am I using the best fingering for this thing I'm doing? What I see instead is people using whatever fingers are convenient or whatever feels right in the moment, or frankly, they just use their index and middle for as much as possible and try to avoid using their ring and pinky. But rarely does anyone ever say to me, hey, you've been watching me for a couple minutes here. Specifically, am I making good choices with my left hand fingers? And they might be, and maybe that's why I haven't interrupted them. I'm just listening to them play. But maybe I'm waiting for them to stop so I can say, dude, you got to use your ring finger. I mean, it's waiting right there. It's the most convenient thing to do. Okay, last question that I wish people would ask me, and this is getting a little philosophical. No one's ever asked me, am I learning music or am I learning the guitar? And if they did ask me that, I would have to stop and think, ooh, am I teaching music or am I teaching the guitar? It feels like I'm teaching the guitar most of the time because I find myself talking about common sense, practical stuff. You know, the length of your fingernails on your fretting hand, right? You know, it's pretty significant when they get too long. How you're holding the pick, how to get better at bar chords, right? Pretty specific guitar stuff. So if someone said, am I learning music or the guitar? I mean, clearly we're learning how to play the guitar. But if I thought to myself, am I teaching music or teaching the guitar? I want to believe I'm teaching music because the guitar is just the vehicle that we've all hopped on, right? We're riding this thing, you know, to the end of the line. But yeah, man. I don't know. Are we all learning music or the guitar? I want us to all be learning music, but I know we get so caught up in the stuff that seems so important. Just to wrap up, this kind of touches on that thing I talked about a few live streams ago about musicianship. You know, an experienced guitar player could take one finger and play a very cool guitar solo with their one finger. Maybe their bare thumb on their picking hand and one finger on their fretting hand, and they could play a great guitar solo because of their experience as a musicianship. So yeah, are we all learning the guitar or are we all learning music? And what's the percentage, you know? If you're studying music theory, then you're learning music, right? If you are, if you're studying, you know, how songs are structured, you know, a 12-bar blues, a variation on a 12-bar blues, you know, chords that are non-diatonic, chords that pop up out of nowhere, that seem to pop up out of nowhere. Yeah, then you're studying music, not just the guitar. Nothing wrong with pursuing the guitar, but my hope for all of us is that we become better musicians. Okay, so there you go. Those are some questions that I never get directly asked, but I wish I did. I don't know, food for thought. I get plenty of good questions. You guys ask me plenty of good questions, but I thought I'd throw that out there. Okay, back to you. I know we don't have too much time left. And I've checked off a bunch of things off my list. Oh, I'll look to see if you guys have some questions in the chat. Before I forget, signs that you are an intermediate guitar player. I'm just going to run through these real quick because I know we've talked about these before, but I was looking over my notes and stuff, and I thought this was a useful list. Okay. Because there's a bunch of things on this list. I'm bringing this closer to the camera. There's a bunch of things on this list that I think we all should be thinking about. Okay, signs that you are an intermediate guitar player. By the way, you don't have to check all these boxes, but these are just some things to think about. Can you and I play a song together? Or can you play along with the recording? That's a great sign that you are no longer a beginner. Doesn't have to be the world's hardest song. What does that involve? That would involve you having the chords memorized. You know the strumming pattern. You can do it with confidence. You can play without any hesitations. You can sing and play at the same time. Again, you don't have to check all those boxes, but those are a variety of things that I encourage you to be thinking about. Okay, here's another one. Number 2, can you improvise? Because maybe that's your thing. Maybe soloing is your thing. If you can improvise, you're an intermediate guitar player. It means you have a scale or 2 or 3 or 4 memorized. You can play with some phrasing. You don't sound like a whole messy bowl of spaghetti when you play. Ba-da-ba, da-ba-do-ba, ba-ba-ba-ba, da-da, da-da, right? You're playing little phrases, right? Can you target notes? The band changes to a G chord. Can you play a note that reflects the G chord? Not by accident, but intentionally play the note G or another note from the G chord, for example. Okay, a third sign that you might be a intermediate guitar player. You know all those 16 chords. A minor, A7, B minor, B7, C, C7, D, D minor, D7, E, E minor, E7, F, G, G7. Do you know those by heart? Then you're an intermediate guitar player. Do you know a few different strum patterns? Excellent. How about a few different finger picking patterns, if that's your thing? Those are all good signs. Can you play something without a warm-up? And that's an interesting little twist. Many of us sound a lot better 20 minutes into our practice session, right? I mean, that's kind of the point of warming up, right? If you have something that you can play equally well anytime, day or night, you can just bang it out just because you're good at it, you are an intermediate guitar player. Hey, simply understanding what a 12-bar blues form is in any key of C, key of E. If you know what a 12-bar blues form is, that's a good box to check. That's an important part of being an intermediate guitar player. Even if you're not pursuing blues guitar, trust me, the 12-bar blues form shows up everywhere. You want to recognize it right away. And lastly, off the top of my head, one more was being able to play several classic blues patterns. And by that, I mean a rhythm guitar pattern, such as the classic shuffle pattern. Okay, so I just want to do a quick run through on those. I know we talked about them, but it feels like it's been a long time, and I want to run those past you because, hey, some of you might be joining us for the first time, and that's awesome. And especially if that's the case, then there you go. Okay, signs that you might be an intermediate guitar player. And maybe you can do half of those things, but not the other half. It's great. It's excellent. I have a checklist. Okay. My own dumb question of the week. We're going to get to that. How about if we do that dumb question of the week? I know there's stuff we still haven't got to. We're checking with our poll results. Let's do that. What's so hard about reading music? This stuff. Where does the time go? Okay, I'm going to bang out a couple things here. And before that, I'm going to look into the chat because I love your questions. And heaven forbid, I don't want to miss any of your questions. Remember, if you do ask a question, I hope you do, put a whole bunch of question marks in advance. So I know. DJ Batman says, your superpower is teaching. Okay, I'll take that. I'll take that. Okay, so yeah, DJ says, if you can play with your teeth, you're an intermediate guitar player. Yes, I like that for sure. If you can play Smoke on the Water, you're an intermediate. Yes, but I would take you one step further. You got to be able to play the other part of Smoke on the Water, not just the riff in the beginning. The other part, when the vocal comes in, is not particularly hard. It's completely unrelated to the first main riff of the song. So I would throw down that gauntlet. You're not truly intermediate until you can play the entire Smoke on the Water. Not the guitar solo. Isn't there a guitar solo later on in the tune? But let's call it the rhythm guitar part during the vocal. Then you're an intermediate. And I say that partly because it's a cool rhythm guitar part that's not particularly hard. But you know, you don't want to just learn the riff, right? Okay. How about, I got stuff popping up here on me. Okay, real quick. What's so hard about reading music? Nothing. Get yourself this book and learn how to read music. The Hal Leonard Guitar Method, Book 1. It's not great. It's just better than all the other ones, you know? Teach yourself. You can teach yourself out of this book. Audio access included. See that right there? Just about everything in the book. You can hear what it's supposed to sound like. So yeah, you can learn how to read music. Here's a little tiny bit of extra information talking about what's so hard about reading music. It's not hard, but there's always a big but. Pee Wee Herman said that. It takes patience. It takes discipline. It takes time. It will make you feel like you're going backwards because you're going to go from playing Smoke on the Water, from playing all the stuff that you currently play right now, to playing slowly and painfully, not painfully, but you're essentially becoming a translator more than you ever have been before. If you've been reading tab, yeah, you're translating the tab into music. If you use chord diagrams, you're translating the chord diagrams into playing music. When you're reading proper music notation, it's even a heavier dose of translation. That's the best word I can come up with. And it's slow. And you're going to be translating very simple sentences, so to speak, right? My cat runs, you know, and that's going to be like your success for the day. You know what I mean? And that takes a lot of patience. And you're going to feel like, oh my God, a minute ago I was playing Sweet Home Alabama and doing pretty well. And now I'm doing this thing. But that's reality. You're learning a new language and you're translating that language into your fingertips, right? From your eyes to your brain, down your arms, into your fingertips. Anybody can do it. And like I said, this book, you know, the Hal Leonard Guitar Method, Book 1, it's as good as any other ones, or better than any other ones. So yeah, get yourself a copy of it. Here's my advice, and I encourage everybody to learn how to read music. Here's my advice, though. Treat it as, think of it as what it truly is. It's a separate skill. If you say, I'm playing these riffs, I'm playing these songs, and I'm getting better and better at that kind of stuff, what you've probably been doing, great. When you crack open that book and pursue it and go page by page, just consider that a completely separate pursuit with its own stages of progress. And in your mind, keep the two things separate, because I don't want you to feel like, oh man, like I'm playing these songs, some of which are just written for the book. Some of them are, you know, really simple melodies. Well, Ode to Joy, pretty cool to play Ode to Joy. You know, Claire de la Lune, Yankee Doodle, you know, just that's my advice. That's the strategy. Treat it as a separate skill. So on one highway, you might be going 50 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour, learning all this cool stuff. And you should keep going down that highway. On the other highway, you know, you might feel like you're moving at a snail's pace, and that is okay. You might never get to the point where your reading ability is as good as your hands. You might not get to that point. You might be able to play all this flashy stuff, great stuff, awesome, legendary stuff, but not be able to read it in music. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? You know, that's okay. That's just life. Very few people, percentage-wise, can do that. You'd have had to start learning guitar and learning to read music at the same time on day one. Your two highways become one highway. Yeah. And even then, it's possible that your physical skills get so great that your reading skills are always lagging behind. That's okay. That's okay. So and I'm one. I'll raise my hand. My playing ability is beyond my reading ability, or I can play stuff quicker than I can read it. Does that make sense? So yeah, so I include myself in that group 100%. Let me be clear about that. There you go. But go ahead, get that book. Teach yourself how to read music. Easy peasy. Hey, if enough people want me to, I can take 5 or 10 minutes every time we do a live stream and do 2 pages of the book. And then, you know, the book is only 46 pages. I don't know. If enough people want me to, I'd be happy to. I do it with my in-person students, especially the kids, because I get kids reading music right away. Willie asks, have I heard Alex Skolnick's Blues Project? I have not, Willie. I know you recommended that. It's on my list. I haven't checked it out yet. Dustin, you're asking about a song. I don't know that song. Sorry. Again, I don't know every song in the world. I don't know them all, and I certainly can't play them all. Okay. Check. And let's check our poll results, because we're just about time to wrap up here. The poll has plenty of votes, and the poll question is, what compliment would you personally love to get? And I threw a bunch of choices. Oh, so interesting. I love these poll results. Okay, the question is, what compliment would you love to hear from someone listening to you play the guitar? 36% would love to hear someone say, oh, that sounds just like the actual song. 28% would love the more general comment of, oh, I wish I could do that. Another 36% again would love it if someone said, did you write that song? Because maybe you're playing an original thing and people are like, did you write that? That's a great, I've heard that not often enough, but a couple little times in my life, someone said, well, who wrote that song? I said, oh, I wrote it. You wrote that song? All it takes is hearing that one time, and you can coast on that good feeling for a long time. 0%, goose egg, 0% voted for the following compliment. You're so fast. I thought people would go for that comment. That's why I put that in. You know, like you play some cool fast thing on the guitar, and people are like, whoa, you're such a fast guitar player. 0%. Maybe I'm going to end the poll right there, because I don't want anyone to suddenly vote. I want to keep that at 0%. I don't know why. Just, you know, 0%. There you go. 50 votes. Nobody wanted to be specifically complimented for being a fast guitar player. Not as your number one choice. Maybe number 2 or number 3, maybe number 4. But no one wanted that. That's awesome. I mean, it's not good or bad. I just think it's interesting how that was no one's priority, not compared to the other choices. And I realized there are a million other possibilities. The YouTube live stream limited me to those, to 4 things. So I picked those 4. I don't know. Yeah, Charlie Beagle's suggesting the comments we don't want to hear. Maybe we'll do that in the future. Well, here's 4 things that someone might say. Which would be your least favorite? I told you about that time. What's that joke? That time I sat in with B.B. King. I didn't tell you about that time I sat in with B.B. King. Yeah, he asked me to sit in the other room. Anyways, Wendy says, I'll never be a shredder. Wendy, you're in good company. It just means you're right there with the rest of us. I mean, nothing wrong with people who are fast guitar players. That's awesome. That's awesome. If I really think about it, I get a little bit jealous. When I think of my favorite guitar players, even if they do fast stuff, it's not their fast stuff that makes me really appreciate and respect their musicianship. It's just not, you know. But I'll say this, people who do fast, complicated stuff, I know how they got there. They got there by putting in the hours and hours and hours. And I can relate to that, and I respect that. And I know we all do. But it's not my main thing. Charlie is asking a serious question. Charlie says, Jonathan, can you read a piece of sheet music and play the song if you've never heard the song before? Yes. Yes. Sometimes, depending on the complexity, I might not play it perfectly the first time. I'll give you a quick example. The stuff in this book, I would say the hardest, in my opinion, the hardest thing in this book is this version of Minuet in G, Johann Sebastian Bach, on page 42. In general, in this book, which is book number 1, I would say this duet is the hardest thing in the book. If you're going to play everything accurately, down, up, picking, watching out for the F sharps, all that kind of stuff. So I can play that. I can play things at this level the first time perfectly all the way through, not just because I've done this book, but in general, that's the kind of thing. I got it. Here's what I struggle with. And I'm telling you this not to be modest, but because the reckoning day is looming on the horizon. The local high school does a high school musical every spring. And I really, really like being included in the pit orchestra of the musical. And so I am, knock on wood, you know, if they need a guitar player in the pit orchestra of the high school musical every spring, I've been the go-to guy, and I want to continue to be the go-to guy because it's a lot of fun. The problem is the music is exactly what the Broadway musicians are playing. Exactly. They don't tone down the music just because it's going to be high school kids on stage. The music is the exact same, and it's not written in tab. And that kicks my butt. I find it extremely challenging. It's, in general, regardless of the show, it's complex music that's intended to be performed by Broadway musicians. And their reading chops, that's how they get the gig, man. It's the reading chops, you know. At least that's one of the main criteria, you know. So it's July. In later, you know, November, December, I'll get the music for the show. The show rehearsals, just a few rehearsals in March, and then it's showtime. So, you know, January, February, that's me getting my reading chops together. So that kicks my butt. Very humbling, extremely humbling. And what I keep telling myself is that the music is intended to be performed by Broadway musicians who are the cream of the crop. And you know, that's why it's tricky for the rest of us, you know. Okay, so yeah, there you go. Thank you for that question, Charlie. I look forward to it. I tell myself that, well, it does. It makes me a better musician. I don't have to tell myself it makes me a better musician. It makes me a better musician. Not just reading the music, but hey, it's a I don't know, maybe a 15-piece ensemble, mainly made up of local professional musicians and or band directors, high school, middle school band directors, you know, good players. And I love being included in that. I love it. I love it, even though it kicks my butt. What are you going to do? Deborah says Cole Porter stuff. Yes, except the trend is doing more contemporary musicals, like Legally Blonde, you know, stuff that doesn't go back too many decades. So yeah, sophisticated. I always say, and I know we got to wrap up in a minute, it's like they took a pop song and made it as complicated as possible. Perfectly good pop song. Well, let's change key 3 times in the middle of the tune. Let's change key signatures. Let's time signatures. I mean, let's just, you know, I don't know. Scott Rhodes says things that things you don't want to hear. Have you ever thought about taking lessons? Yeah, no one has ever said that to me, but That would be, have you thought about taking lessons? Yeah. Yeah. I'd rather not hear that. Hey, you know what? I'm the same as you guys. I want to be better next year than I am this year, noticeably better. and, part of that is recognizing where you're at right now and being as clear as possible about where you want to be. And that takes some doing sometimes to be as clear as possible. Brian says, is it better to learn one genre of music or several? It could spread you thin when learning the guitar. Yeah. Well, put it this way, nothing wrong with being really into one style of music and saying, geez, I really want to pursue that. Nothing wrong with that. And nothing wrong with learning several at the same time. Here's my number one concern, and this I'm going to answer your question. Whatever keeps you playing and keeps you practicing. So if you're focused on blues and some teacher pushing you to do some classical finger picking is just, you're finding it frustrating and it makes you confused and just doesn't, it's making you nuts, then focus on blues. Nothing wrong with that. If you're doing one thing and you're making some progress, but you're getting burned out and you really wish someone would provide you something else to play, and that will keep you going on the guitar, then yeah, time to find something else to do. It's a great question, and the answer really depends. But you're right, though. Trying to do too much, like William Collier's question earlier in the live stream, trying to do too much, yeah, you can feel overwhelmed, burned out, get the feeling you're not making much progress on any of it, because maybe you're not, because you're doing 10 different things, and maybe you're not making much progress. So that's when you have to have that talk, look in the mirror and ask yourself what's going to make you happy and prioritize that thing. Doesn't mean you can't do the other stuff. On a very physical level, and maybe I'll leave you with this because I know it's getting late and I'm just about ready to wrap up myself. Whatever keeps your fretting hand moving, okay? Just keep that fretting hand moving. If nothing else, I don't even care what style of music you're playing, what YouTube video you're learning from. Keep your left hand, if you're a righty, keep your fretting hand moving every day. Ideally doing stuff that's a little bit challenging, a little bit more challenging every day. Keep that left hand moving. Your progress is so closely related to your left hand's capabilities, your dexterity, that just keep that left hand going at all costs, Okay, hey, before we wrap up, in the description of this video, I put links to some YouTube videos. So I'm going to try this thing here, this sharing screen thing, because this will be a nice way to wrap up the show and whet your appetite for the links, the YouTube links that are in the description of this video right now. Let's talk about a couple of people in no particular order. Okay, I put a link to this gentleman named Cassius Culpepper. Okay, can you guys see this right now? Ooh, I like this guy a lot. He's a Navy veteran from Alabama, happens to have a new album out, Cassius Culpepper, K-A-S-H-U-S, Culpepper, C-U-L-P-E-P-P-E-R. Check him out. He's on tour. If I scroll, can you guys see this? He's on tour. Anybody here live in the U.S.? Well, he's coming through the South and Iowa, Wisconsin. Cassius Culpepper. Check him out. Okay. How about if I click on, bear with me, what if I click on, hold on, stop sharing. What if I click on this? Here's someone who sadly is no longer with us, but I put a link to her in the description here. We got to check out Cordell Jackson. Cordell Jackson, based on my research, number one, she's awesome. Number two, some of you might remember her from a Budweiser commercial she did, I think, during the Super Bowl in the 90s. The link to that Budweiser ad is in the description of today's live stream. I believe, and you can see this on Wikipedia, thought to be the first woman to produce, engineer, arrange, and promote music on her own rock and roll music label. Sun Records didn't give her a deal, so she started, guess what, Moon Records, and the rest is history. Please check out Cordell Jackson. Okay, you won't regret it. How about, okay, how about we here? How about this one? Another name you should be familiar with. Another Chicago performer. Here we go. David Honeyboy Edwards. I got to see Mr. Edwards perform in the late 90s, very early 2000-ish. Honeyboy Edwards, a couple of my teaching mates where I used to teach, they were acting as his backing band. And definitely one of the most intense blues performances I'd ever seen. And one of the loudest, man, he was playing loud. David Honeyboy Edwards, a contemporary of Robert Johnson. He could speak to what it was like to hang out with Robert Johnson. So I put some Honeyboy Edwards links, at least one, and maybe two in the description of this live stream. Again, the theme here is some of the coolest guitar players on YouTube. How's about when I got two more? I got two more for you, okay? How about, oh, now here's a young gentleman who, how about next week I will show you a cool thing I learned from him. There we go. Nobuki Takaman. Like some of the other people I recommend to you guys, it's not just his talent and his ability that got my attention. I like his social media presence, meaning he posts something and I like how he presents himself. I like how he presents this guitar information. I think, oh, that cool thing, I can do that thing you just showed me. That's a cool exercise. That's a cool thing. And I'll save it for next time, but I have two things from him that I picked up on that I want to share with you guys. Okay, last one. Where are we? Okay, last one. The famous, the one and only guitar. He's a guitarist's guitarist. The famous Ted Green. Ted Green. And despite all those pictures that I'm showing you right there, Ted Green was most often seen, I believe, with a very cool, very simple Fender Telecaster. Ted Green is, my understanding, the way I, he's a guitarist. He was a teacher's teacher. He's who the teachers go to. They go to Ted Green. And I shared a link in today's live stream to, I believe it's a video of him teaching a lesson, kind of an informal lesson. Very interesting guy. Sadly, no longer with us. One thing that speaks to his legacy is the amount of interest in his teaching even after his death. And you can see this website that I'm showing you right here is tedgreen.com. It's how you can access his stuff even though he... Okay, so where are we here? There we go. Okay, so there you go. Deborah Cohen says, I like Ted Green. Yeah, it's intense stuff, right? It's not beginner stuff. But anyways, we all should know about Ted Green. Okay, man, I think, well, tonight was a long one. I'm done, though. I'm done if you're done. There's a couple of things I didn't get to, but you know what? We covered a lot of ground, my friends. Okay. Music fan says, where's the bat phone when we need it? Is that how we know it's time? Like, that's how it's time to move to the next thing? The bat phone rings and, oh, the bat phone, gotta go. Speaking of bat phones, Link Wray, if you want to really live, listen to Link Wray's version of the Batman theme song. Crank it up nice and loud. Quick, Batman, it's the bat signal. He doesn't just play the Batman theme song. There's like a voiceover lead-in to the Batman theme song. You got to hear it to believe it. Okay. That's all I got. I'm done. My weekend begins now. My friends, thanks for being here. I will see you next Saturday. We covered a lot of what I hope to cover today. You asked a lot of great questions. I'm going to be time stamping this as soon as possible. That's it. I'm done. I'm done. The root beer is wearing off. I'll see you guys same time, same place next Saturday. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your questions. Sleep. Oh, the screen share wasn't working. The screen share wasn't working at all. Oh, not at all. How is that possible? Oh well. Oh well. Better luck next time. All right, you guys. Take care. Good night.